Mr. Edwards meets Santa Claus. There are stories that begin with trumpets and fanfare, glittering lights and cheering crowds. And then there are stories that slip quietly into the world, almost unnoticed, like a snowflake landing softly on a mitten. This is one of the quiet ones, and yet of all the tales I could tell, few shine as brightly in my memory as the night Mr. Edwards met Santa Claus. It happened many winters ago, in a small frontier town on the edge of the great American wilderness. The town was not much to look at, just a scattering of wooden cabins, a rough general store, a tiny schoolhouse, and a chapel that doubled as a gathering hall. It was a place where the wind cut sharp, the snow piled deep, and every family knew the weight of hard work and harder weather. That year, the winter had been particularly cruel. Crops had failed early, hunting had been scarce, and sickness had swept through the settlement like a shadow. People did what they could to help one another, but even the strongest spirits began to sag beneath the cold burden of worry. By the time December arrived, joy felt like a distant memory, as if Christmas itself had frozen somewhere far away and could not find its way through the storm. There was a family in that settlement, the Ingalls family, who lived in a sturdy but humble cabin near the bank of a frozen creek. The father worked long days cutting wood and hauling supplies, while the mother kept the home warm as best she could, sewing, mending, and baking from what little she had. Their daughters, bright-eyed and hopeful, spent the afternoon before Christmas huddled under blankets, whispering about the possibility of a visit from Santa Claus. "Do you think he can find us way out here?" the youngest girl asked, voice trembling with both excitement and doubt. Her older sister hesitated, then said with brave certainty, "Of course he will. Santa always finds children who believe." Their mother, listening quietly as she stirred a thin soup, smiled softly. But when the girls looked away, she and their father exchanged a glance heavy with unspoken fear. The snow outside had grown deep enough to swallow wagon wheels. The wind howled fiercely through the cracks in the walls. There were no gifts hidden away, no treats to surprise the girls with, and even the special Christmas bread they always baked would be missing this year. The flour had run out days before. Night settled early, and the family lit their tiny lantern, its light flickering against rough-hewn walls. They sat close to the fire, singing carols in low voices to push away the silence. But beneath the music lay a question that clung to every breath. What would Christmas be without anything to give? As the girls were tucked into their shared bed, the youngest whispered again, "I hope Santa isn't too cold. I hope he knows we're waiting." Their father kissed their foreheads, then went outside into the bitter air. He stood for a long moment, staring out into the darkness, the snow swirling thick and wild around him. He whispered a prayer, not for wealth or abundance, but simply for a sign that Christmas still mattered, even here. And that is where another thread of the story begins, far away at the North Pole, where I was preparing for my journey. Even though I travel swiftly and silently, I always feel the hearts that call to me most strongly. Some shine like candle flames in the dark, brave and steady. Others flicker as if they may go out at any moment. And sometimes, when many hearts ache at once, the world seems to lean forward, holding its breath. That night, I felt the quiet desperation of that little settlement like a tug at the hem of my coat. It was not the plea for toys that reached me, but something deeper, a longing for hope itself. I guided the sleigh into the furious wind, the reindeer straining forward with courage only they possess. Snow stung my face, and the sky above was black as ink. But through the storm, I caught sight of a figure making his way along a narrow trail, half buried by snowdrifts. A man on horseback, leaning low in the saddle. His coat frozen stiff, his beard crusted with ice. It was Mr. Edwards. He was not a wealthy man, not in the way the world counts wealth. He lived alone in a cabin some distance from town, earning what he could through hard labor. But he carried something rare inside him, the instinct to give, even when he had very little. She had heard the whispers that children in the settlement might wake on Christmas morning to find nothing at all, and he could not bear the thought. So he had set out through the storm, determined to bring what small gifts he could, a few peppermint sticks, some little tin cups he had managed to barter for, and a handful of pennies he had saved. But the storm had turned cruel, and the river crossing had nearly swept him away. His horse was trembling with exhaustion, his coat soaked with icy water, and he himself was close to collapsing into the snow. When I saw him sway in the saddle and slip halfway to the ground, I steered the sleigh down toward him. The reindeer's hooves struck the snow lightly, and I stepped forward. "Evening, Mr. Edwards," I said gently. He blinked through the blur of snow, shivering violently. "Well, who's there?" I laid a hand on his shoulder to steady him. "A friend," I said, "a traveler on a long road, much like yourself." He stared at me, blinking hard until his vision cleared. His eyes widened, not in fear, but in something like wonder. "It can't be," he whispered. "I must be half frozen and dreaming." "Dream or not," I said with a smile, "you've done something very brave tonight." He let out a weak laugh. "Brave? I nearly drowned in that river, and I don't even know if I can make it to the Ingalls cabin before this storm buries the trail. But somebody's got to try. A Christmas with no gifts for those girls? I just can't stand the thought." His honesty warmed me more than any fire could. This man, who had so little, had risked his own life to bring joy to someone else. That is the kind of spirit that moves mountains and sleighs. "Give me your burden," I said, lifting the small soaked sack from his hands. "I'll see to it that the gifts reach the right place." He shook his head stubbornly. "No, I said I'd bring them myself, and I don't break a promise." I admired his resolve, but I also saw his trembling legs and the gray tinge around his lips. The cold was already taking a price. "Then I will help you," I said. "No one carries Christmas alone." With gentle hands, I helped him into the sleigh, wrapped a thick blanket around his shoulders, and placed the sack beside him. The reindeer pawed the ground, eager to fly. "We'll be there in moments," I told him. "Rest now." His eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion pulling at him. But as we lifted into the storm and soared above the treetops, he murmured, "Tell them, tell those girls, this Christmas comes from someone who cares." "You'll tell them yourself," I promised. When we landed outside the Ingalls cabin, the lantern in the window flickered as if it sensed our arrival. I helped Mr. Edwards to his feet. His legs shook, but he stayed upright with sheer determination. We approached the door, and he lifted his hand to knock. Inside, the father opened the door, astonishment lighting his face as he saw the frozen, snow-covered figure standing there. "Mr. Edwards, what on earth, how did you—" "Had to bring a little Christmas," Edwards managed to say, his voice ragged. "Couldn't have those young'uns waking up to nothing at all." The father called his wife, and together they guided him toward the fire. The mother wrapped his hands in warm cloth. The father looked into the sack he carried and gasped softly. The items were small and humble, but in that moment, they looked like treasures from a king's vault. The children, awakened by the commotion, peeked around the corner. Their eyes widened when they saw the stranger dripping snow onto the floor. "Merry Christmas," he said with a tired smile. "Santa Claus asked me to give these to you personally." "Santa?" the youngest breathed. He nodded. "He said he was flying nearby and needed someone dependable for the job." The girls stared at him with wonder that sparkled brighter than any star. When they looked back toward the open door a moment later, perhaps hoping to catch sight of me, I was already gone, lifting into the sky once more. But the glow from that house followed me, warming the icy wind. Inside, Mr. Edwards received a hot meal, dry clothes, and a place to sleep near the fire. Laughter began to stir again, soft at first, then growing. The parents watched their daughters delight over peppermint candies and tin cups, as if they were made of gold. There were tears that night, of relief, of gratitude, of hope returning like a candle relit. The next morning, as sunlight spilled slowly across the snow, the whole cabin seemed brighter. It was not because of the gifts themselves. It was because someone had cared enough to bring them. When Mr. Edwards rose to leave later that day, the father shook his hand firmly. "You didn't just bring Christmas to our home," he said. "You reminded us what it really means." Mr. Edwards smiled, a little embarrassed. "Just did what felt right." The mother placed a warm biscuit in his hand. "You gave us the greatest gift," she said quietly. "You showed us that we are not alone." I watched from above as he rode away, the wind gentle now, the sun bright on the snow. He had no idea how far his simple gesture would echo, not only through that small settlement, but through every heart that has ever wondered whether kindness still matters. And so, when someone asks me what the greatest gift is, I remember that night. Not the toys and fancy houses, not the glittering packages stacked high beneath great trees, but the moment when one man with nothing to spare gave everything he had simply because he believed no child should wake up forgotten. The greatest gift is not wealth. It is not luxury. It is not perfection. The greatest gift is love in action, the willingness to show up, to carry hope through a storm, to give what little you have simply because someone needs it. And I tell them, if you truly want to honor Christmas, do as Mr. Edwards did. Bring warmth where there is cold. Bring companionship where there is loneliness. Bring kindness where there is sorrow. Be brave enough to care, because when you do, you will discover the truth I've seen in every century and every land. The greatest gift is a heart that never stops giving. Merry Christmas, my friend. May you always have the courage to bring light through the storm, and may you always know that no act of kindness is ever too small to change the world.